Back in Source, I had someone in my clan who would tell us where the enemy team was every round. No joke, he claimed he just had his sound turned up ridiculously high. I was a bit suspicious of this claim, but at the time his shoutouts proved useful, so I was like, meh, and continued to win games with the guy, as everybody did back then with young naivete. But please, don't play CSGO at high volumes. Your hearing is valuable and, just like your health in CSGO, can't regenerate. Allow me to find out how far you can hear sounds from, so you don't have to. The answer to this is quite simple, if you know where to look. All the information can be found in the text files within CSGO's scripts folder. I suggest you take a look, it really is quite interesting. In a boring kind of way. Guns each have two sounds, one for up close, the other far away. Here's the AK-47 up close, and here's the sound far away, but made to sound the same volume. Close, far away. Close, far away. You get the picture. Between 800 and 2800 units, the close sound fades out, and beyond 2800, only the distant sounding version can be heard. And beyond roughly 3937 units, you can't hear anything at all. It all drops off as dictated by this bit of the text file, which in real terms looks like this. What a disaster of a graph. I'm not proud of it. But you can see that the volume gets quieter the further a gunshot is from your player, which you'd expect, and it drops to effectively 0 just before reaching 4000 units, which I've already said. So this graph has taught us nothing. Let's move on quickly. This same drop-off distance applies to most weapons, but suppressed ones only have a single sound. The USPS and M4A1S fade to 0 beyond 800 units, and the MP5 SD is 1000 for some reason, making it less silenced than the other suppressed weapons are. This seems intentional though, as this change from 800 to 1000 units was in one of the updates following the weapon's release. Let's move on to other sounds. If you're interested in knowing more, then use the console command snd_show1, which will show all the sounds currently being played in the top right hand corner of your screen. This command has an interesting history, in that it's completely ancient. It has survived through many engines, but has its roots way back in Quake 1 from 1996. This shows just how old some bits of Source still are. Reloading a weapon can be heard to a distance of 1100 units, which is odd if you think about it. That's further than the silenced weapons can be heard being fired from. And to make matters even worse, it appears there's a bug with it. I only tried with a few weapons, but with the suppressed MP5 of all weapons, although the reload is silent beyond 1100 units, the sound of the magazine hitting the floor isn't. I tried at 5000 units, far enough away to render the AWP silent, and the magazine dropping could still be heard, making it the loudest sound in the entire game. Imagine that. You use an MP5 to be sneaky and the entire map will hear when you reload. In its defense, it wasn't just the MP5. I also tried with the AWP, and that too could be heard. Sloth Squadron says that this should be impossible, as this sound should be restricted to 600 units. But hey, you can hear for yourself. It doesn't happen every time. In fact, it's probably when you reload twice in the same spot and the magazines hit together that's doing it. Somebody else try to get this to happen too, please. Decoys go silent just before 3000 units, even with the AWP, but the explosion at the end of a decoy's life can be heard to almost 4000. And the generic explode sound further still. Grenade bounces are loud. These don't drop off in the same way as other sounds do, and from my manual testing they could be heard from 4000 units away, further than the explosion from them. What a silly virtual world this is. Footsteps can be heard from up to 1100 units away, but interestingly on metal grates, terrorists move more quietly than CTs. It looks like halfway down one of these script files, somebody at Valve mistook a 9 for a 6, as I can't think of any other reason for these values to be different. Here are how the two teams compare at different distances. Okay, that's a bit disappointing, but there's still a difference between the teams of roughly 3 to 4 decibels. And while footsteps can be heard from up to 1100 units, landing, which you'd expect to be louder, can only be heard from 1000 units away, less than the footsteps themselves. Isn't that stupid? Here's a guy running about at 1000 units away so you can hear for yourself. Volume-wise, water behaves in exactly the same way. Your character will make a splashy sound as they jump up and as they fall down through the surface of it. This will then be followed up with the landing sound for whatever the surface is underneath the water. Isn't all of this interesting? Shame it's completely useless, since you'll generally rely on sound when you don't have a direct line of sight, which is when the occlusion kicks in and makes things all quieter anyway. What a shame. But what about Source? That doesn't have occlusion, and the sound works in a different way from that of Global Offensive's. So I loaded it up and tested the footstep distances. They dropped to 0 volume before reaching a distance of 1,000 units, making them even quieter than in Global Offensive. I can finally conclude that my teammate was a cheater. Thanks to Sloth Squadron for sharing his wisdom about the sound files with me. In fact, he has a video on his channel about a sound bug that he encountered with the suppressed weapons. It has since been fixed, and Valve even featured him in the update notes for pointing it out, immortalizing his contributions to the game forever.